Hello, legends. Welcome back. It has been a little while. The hiatus has ended, and if it is your first time here, thanks for tuning in to this podcast where I talk to changemakers about the things they do and don't do that hurt and other stuff. And it is great to be back on the mic. I am recording this from the floor of what was my isolation inspiration station. My desk has been shipped to Aotearoa, and in Naarm, Melbourne, where I am now, we are out of lockdown, so no need for the isolation anymore. But I'll tell you what, the inspiration is running rife because I've finished university for the semester and I am excited to live a juicy but still somewhat uncertain summer. Today's guest I met almost a year ago. His sparkly eyes and magnetic energy drew me in, and then I heard him talk. And okay, so Leo Murray is driven by the fascinatingly diverse and beautiful web of relationships that form the natural world. His active role as a changemaker and thought leader in Aotearoa manifests in similar ways. He's a designer, an organizer, a facilitator, a performer, a teacher, an activist, and visionary. And I guess that's kind of similar to me in some ways, where there's these values are kind of at our core, and then there's lots of different guises that they come under. Leo's socio-ecological enterprise, Why Waste, sees our socio-economic systems like an ecosystem, so we can approach resilience and regeneration in the same way that nature does. Nature draws strength through resilience. She is resilient through diversity and diverse through the interconnected web of relationships that create life on Earth. And that is what Why Waste is helping support their partners to increase their regenerative impact by providing local solutions to global issues. So in this chat, Leo talks about his relationship with his mother and draws parallels to humanities' relationship with nature, that we humans at the moment with the world are angry teenagers having a total temper tantrum. We talk worms, the worm, the dance move, how nature is a whole-archy, not a hierarchy, eurocentrism, understanding feedback, and crying. Leo is calm, gracious, and knowledgeable, and I feel like I sound like a total noob because there is so much more to learn about what he has to share. So I hope, my friends, you enjoy this chat with Leo Murray. Being here today. You are my guest. Who are you?
Hello. Hey, yeah, I'm Leo. I come from Mount Maunganui in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Stoked to be here with you. What's your name again?
I'm Joanna Joy, JJ.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, a little rebrand. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny because like I have multiple facets and everything like that, but Joanna is my name and Joy is my middle name.
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
But people often,
aliases.
yeah. So the Banana Jolie thing, I was like, when starting this podcast, I was like, should I be Banana Jolie? But Banana Jolie is not as, I'm not going to be cracking too many jokes today. Well, that's not the intention. And Banana Jolie will crack a few more jokes. So yeah, that's who I am.
Joanna.
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
Okay, Leo. And if I was to say to you, does it hurt when you do that? Don't do that. What is that?
It sort of brings up a few things, and like I suppose I'm almost drawn to questioning like the process. I mean, there's a number of that, sure, but there's also lots of value in doing the things that hurts too. I mean, I was on the phone to my mum this morning. It's her birthday, and I recently asked her to kind of like stop treating me like a child. You know, I'm 33, and people like I facilitate men's rites of passage work. Like I feel like I've kind of arrived at this mature relationship with myself and with nature and the world, and I was like, oh, yeah, I want to like have a new relationship with you where like you're an elder, you know, you're not my mother, like I'm a child. And she was like, it's too uncomfortable. Like I can't, she said, you know, like I can't change who I am. And it was a really, really, it was really, really painful thing for her to go into. And I had to kind of hold this other point of being like, well, yeah, like, aren't all the best lessons in life learnt from the most kind of ouchiest circumstances? If I was to draw on all of the most formative experiences of my life, I don't think like there'd be, you know, lots of them are like, you know, I'm on a dance floor and I'm with my friends and maybe we're like the euphoria is present and the grace is moving and there's lots of beautiful things. But it was really like the times when I was just chewing through the most difficult circumstances that caused me to grow into someone that I can be proud of. So that thing that hurts that I don't want to do is maybe something, yeah, maybe that thing that is the most valuable for me in the long run. I'm not sure. If I just fucked up the whole podcast, like,
You have
yeah,
not. No,
okay,
you
great, yeah,
haven't.
cool.
No, no, no. That's awesome because that's the
Sweet, we
thing.
can.
Like this element of pain,
Mm,
it's for me. That's why. Well, actually, the reason why I started it is because this was originally a joke in my show, and then someone told me that you should do a podcast, and so then I started. Well, I just thought about
mm,
it, and I was like, well, maybe okay, cool, why not? So much of our human experience is the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. And like you
mm.
said, that pain is what teaches us. And so, no, you haven't stuffed up the podcast because you've offered a little nugget of, of something of wisdom and so maybe to extend on what you were saying, maybe the thing that would hurt could be letting that pain go in vain or running away
Mm,
from it rather than running towards, as you did with your
mm.
mum. Have you got siblings?
Yeah.
Do you find that as well, those family kind of scripts and roles that we play in terms of relating to them as adults? Have you experienced that?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I found that that narrative of like, because obviously there's lots at play, a lot of complexity, and it was actually a really easy language to use. It's just like, hey, like it's not too threatening to ask someone, can you just treat me like I'm an adult now? Like our culture doesn't have these rites of passage that would have made that easy for you to acknowledge that I'd gone out and fought a lion or a tiger or a bear or something. And then like those people go through that kind of teenage wanting to watch the world burn, or that sort of teenage tantrum that basically our whole species is in right now. But so we need a major initiation as a collective, surely. So
Yeah,
we,
we
we
do.
can park that for later. But like this little piece of kind of instead of sort of saying, oh, you know, you're not this or you're not that, or I need you to grow up to someone who's the generation older than you who raised me, is it can be quite a confronting conversation. But it's not too bad to just sort of like look at the context and be like, oh, hey, this context wasn't really conducive to that kind of intergenerational handover. So how can we create that intentionally here together so that not only you can begin to see me as a man, but I can begin to see you as an elder, especially within the environment of a Western world where so many of our elders are held to be so simply by virtue of being older, even though really like what have they actually done to contribute? They just got really, really good at like leveraging debt to like own multiple houses. There's just kind of like a like I want to invite them back into life and like the broader story of kind of what's going on and moving forward through generations is it's not necessarily something that the baby boomers have really done a whole lot for. I saw a crazy like a graph of like the generational wealth between baby boomers, Generation X, and the millennials. There's just just a huge disruption in the flow of resources through generations right now, and it's like a just like the population of the generation itself. It's like a pig moving through the body of a snake, and it's really like it's moved right the way down to the tail, and the mouth is like kind of hungry and like no has nowhere to live, and it's like when's this going to work? And so I mean, I spent a lot of my life kind of like most of my work is trying to steer humanity towards a more harmonious relationship with nature. And so a lot of that discourse is around rewriting our mother nature narrative and love of nature, and I'm sort of like on the record of for being like someone who's we need to treat our mother right, like, and it's really, well, like I'm just like this walking hypocrite really, because I need to go and heal the relationship that I have with my mother, and the way that I need to show up for that with someone who is, losing their neuroplasticity. Like, it's physically difficult for her to chew through these uncomfortable subjects that were like kind of handed to her, like intergenerationally. There's just all this pain, and I'm putting up these kind of like healthy boundaries, this and that, but I'm realizing that my boundaries are just they're also walls, and they're the same walls that she's created, and it's just such a huge challenge to overcome with any of the kind of like oppositional or like war thinking of the Western world. Almost have to like completely decolonize the way that I approach this. And I remember being quite confronted by a friend who was from South Africa, who told me once that New Zealand has really, really stink family values. And I was like, wait, what? Like, how dare you? And he was like, no. Yeah. And then, yeah, he just kind of like spelled it out, just how like individualistic our culture is, and how we just kind of like, as soon as you're 18, it's like, get out of my house, go make a man of yourself, like all of this kind of, don't think you're going to be getting anything from me when I die, like kind of attitude. And I just figured that was normal, but I think in other cultures, especially Asian cultures, and he was from South Africa, he was like, man, we like stick together, My parents give me everything, and the understanding is that I take care of them when they're old. And I don't think we had that so much in New Zealand, but maybe we could learn something from it. I'm not saying that we need to go head first, but especially now. I mean, a classic example is just how many grandparents now have their relationship to their grandchildren through Zoom in Melbourne or San Francisco or London, and it's like, the joke's on you,
Yeah, for sure.
That would be a real that thing that hurts. Don't do that. Is think, rational brain, that you can do it by yourself, and that we can get through whatever mess without each other, which is just such an incredible delusion. I mean, I'm not saying that I or you can't like live our lives without the support of our parents, but to think that we can do it without the support of someone is just is outrageous. And I think that one place that's really coming through quite strongly is in a lot of that kind of like massively polarized, and we don't have to go there in the conversation, but this about vaccinations. A lot of the folks who hold that the virus has been weaponized and that it's being used to control a population, they're big pieces like, oh, I'm sovereign, and I'm in control of my life. You're not in control, and it's all great. It's all good if you've got like the permaculture homestead and you can like grow all your food, and epic. But if you like live in a city, like we're all just so interdependent, or even any kind of community of interdependence. That would be one thing that I think that is really like creeping in, is this idea that that our actions are independent from the impacts that they have on others. Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah. Does it hurt when you do that? Don't do that. Isolate. Yeah. Wow. Thanks so much for sharing that stuff about your family, because, and all of it, because it goes right back, all of that sort of stuff. And so, like you said, though, as well, because I had, when I returned to New Zealand, I had quite a intense healing conversation with my mum. And, I'm really fortunate that she took it as well as it could go. But I also said to her, yeah, thumbs up, go mum. I also said, you weren't as equipped as what I am. By the time you were my age, you had 3 kids and you didn't have all this access to information. It wasn't acceptable to be on this path of like self-actualization and to share. Well, maybe it was, maybe we didn't know about it in a different way, but yeah, what you said about that there's this gap between, I guess, the generations of what it's like to be able to lean in and navigate that. I really like what you said about that our species is having a bit of a teenage tantrum.
Yeah.
Do you want to expand how that
Yeah,
looks for
well,
you?
like the common narrative for indigenous cultures is that I'll speak on behalf of the indigenous culture of New Zealand because I'm most familiar with that. But like, so our Earth Mother, the Earth has a feminine presence, and her name is Papa Tuanuku, and elsewhere, Gaia or Pachamama, and in New Zealand, the father is the sky, Ranginui, and we are their children, like we are kind of, well, it's like we're receiving them. I think the reason why I suppose like humans have managed to have a harmonious relationship with nature in the past is because of that kind of reverence and in service to relationship. And then through, sort of separation from nature and patriarchy and imperialism and the colonization that followed that, we kind of have grown older, and we no longer see mother as like something to be afraid of and revere, but rebel against and like dig up and fight and sell it to the highest bidder. And we're just in this giant tantrum, and everyone's just really like that narrow-minded teenage mind, an uninitiated. I'll just speak for the males now, given that like they make most of the sort of shit decisions that have got us here. It's very narrow, and it's all about me. And so really what I'm craving, and I have a feeling if there is like a web of data or consciousness or God or whatever nature, probably wants that initiation to occur as well. And so that climate change is sort of qualifies as like a rite of passage. When you go out into the night and it's dark and it's cold and it's scary, and you're in the cave with I mentioned the lion already, so we'll just roll with the lion. Like, we might fuck this up, like we might die. And the kind of like critical kind of like aspect of an initiation is that the identity psychologically is. And then the other aspect that's also really critical is that once they have successfully, because if they're unsuccessful, they're not coming back to their community. And so when they do come back to their community, that the community actually acknowledges them and says, "You're different. You're a big boy now. You're a man." And that's when especially the mothers and the sisters and the aunties, and they actually do the initiating, whereas the men just facilitate the threshold that person has to pass. And so that's kind of like the conversation I'm having with my mom, which is just a hard case, like really, really interesting. I don't want to bring like the common knowledge, the common language of like modern day psychology to her, because then I'd rather she just go see a therapist, which she doesn't want to do. So so we're trying to like extrapolate this rite of passage analogy out to like our society as a whole. And so the pattern would be, in theory, and I could be like just speaking way out of turn here, so I'll just name that, that we go from being like having this mother nature relationship through this really dumb, like neoliberal capital, I don't know, like industrial civilization teenagehood, to a lover nature relationship, and where we can actually meet nature, not necessarily on like even keel, given that like the broader story of life is just so big and we are so small, but it's more about a mature way that we can participate in that story and contribute and actually like give something back to this great gift of like a life on this earth. And really, for me, that's just about acknowledging that like me, Leo, I'm just like, a slither of a fingernail or like a hair follicle of this superorganism of humanity, which has the same scale of tininess, of like significant insignificance to all other non-human beings that are all making up this giant, like, and incredibly meaningful, while we're all over here being like, what's the meaning of life? Oh my God. And like the meaning is just so overwhelmingly epic. And it has this huge, just glorious direction towards complexity and interrelationship. that it's just, I just can't wait for there to be so much pressure. I don't know, like a virus and like sea levels and like everything's fucking on fire and all of this crazy shit, and just really like squeeze us a bit so that we can either realize or be cross that threshold into that mature relationship with ourselves and each other in our ecological context, or not. I'm also just kind of cool with failing as well. At least that way, like the sunset will still be beautiful, trees will still photosynthesize. Because if we continue to go the way we are, of course, the sun won't make it through the atmosphere, or it will, and it'll kill everything. And like just lots of way bigger than me stuff.
Man, the mind boggles. Your way with words, it's like ear chocolate. Like, thank you for the way that you describe and tell stories. I'm just like, yes, keep talking, keep talking. Thank you so much for putting it that way, because like you said, it's such, all this stuff, it's so big, and we can get really overwhelmed and kind of throw our hands up and be like, I don't know how to do it. Or we can just get really nihilistic. And that's also why I'm here, because it's kind of like, people have been talking about, I guess, what is this meaning and where do we find this connectedness and where have we gone wrong for so long? And we try as much as we can to build ourselves up to be mightier, to kind of figure it all out. What I'm really curious about with you, and what I really like about your language, how have you found your, I guess, stepping into your role as a storyteller in terms of getting people to really, getting the penny to drop for people when it comes to important things like the environment and interconnectedness? And I want to ask you about language and how you've found that can really make change.
Yeah, right on. I'm not super huge on like the extreme version of woke liberalism, but I would say that privilege awareness and and decolonization and feminism, like just acknowledging that like life isn't like a giant pyramid scheme with all the white guys at the top, is a pretty accessible way to have an on ramp. Because if people aren't ready to go there, then you gotta start way back, and that's a lot more work. And like you kind of nailed it there when you were like, oh, we're all kind of trying to be mightier so that we can figure it all out. Like really, it's not about power over, but power with, power versus force. And instead of trying to like measure everything, fit all of the glory and the magic of nature through the like bottleneck of number, measure it and then plug it all into like science so that we know everything, even though like we kind of suck at connecting the dots between all the things that we know. So there's all this knowledge but not enough understanding. So instead of coming at it in a way where we can control it, we humble ourselves to it. And that for me as a white male has been really, really powerful. It's just like, oh wow, like I don't have to know. And sitting in the not knowing opens me up to like all of so much more feeling, all the wealth and value in my senses. I went for a walk this morning and I stood on this headland and I looked out to the east to like where the Chatham Islands, across to like, I don't know, like Patagonia, and I blew the ocean a kiss. And that to me was, I'm just really humbling myself to nature so that I can be more in service to life. More in service to life means that we can all like, it's way more inclusive. I didn't make this quote up, but I somehow became attributed to it. Was if you have more than you need, build a bigger table, not a higher fence. And if we could just kind of like take the energy of that piece and apply it to the way that our society like interacts with each other in the context, whoa, a lot of things would start to unravel. A lot of destructive things, and a lot of really beautiful and constructive things could start to bloom and unfold. And that's really something that humans do inherently, is we just see everything as like a a bricolage of incomplete parts. Everything's just
I have not heard someone use the word bricolage. I looked that up. That was like my word of the day. And you're the first person. I was like, and I got so excited because I had to contact my dad. I was like, Dad, I found a new word, bricolage. And you just used it. This is sensational. Are you taking it to mean, so the word bricolage, it's kind of like bric-a-brac, right? It's like a whole lot of different little
yeah,
items. Is that
yeah.
what you
That's how
take it to
humans
mean?
create reality. Is we have all of these these little pieces in our brain, and we sort of put them together, and we're like, oh, well, right, well, that's how reality works, and that's how nature kind of works, and that's how the world is not working very well. Like, and really, but like if you look at nature, if you look at the way a new bud on a tree in spring, it's sort of it's not incomplete. It's not like it's not half of a flower or even a tenth of a flower. It's just a really tiny flower, and it's unfolding, and nature just unfolds all of these holes from a hole and into a whole-archy of nested holes within holes that go from like an atomic substructure to the observable universe, and nothing is incomplete within it. And when we can get our head around the whole-archy, then we start to unpack the hierarchy, because what fucking good has that done? I mean, yeah, like there's things in nature that are inherently hierarchical. If there's like a school of kahawai, that's a fish here in New Zealand, and then there's a shark. There's like a hierarchy of power, but it's not asymmetrical. It's distributed evenly. If the shark gets like a sharper tooth, a longer tooth, the kahawai will evolve to have like a longer tail. If there's no more kahawai, the shark just dies because there's no kahawai. And if the shark dies, then like the ecosystem of the kahawai is totally disrupted and will probably collapse anyway. So everything is interdependent in this seeming hierarchy of nature, which is, when you zoom out, is actually a holarchy, and everything is sort of working together. And that's something that I would like dearly love for humans to kind of get their head around. Daniel Schmachtenberger, who's a really onto it guy, and I highly recommend people track that down, track this guy down. He puts it this way. He says that pretty much most of humans' problems comes from these two generator functions, and one is rivalrous dynamics and asymmetrical distribution of power. In nature, both of those exist, but whenever they come together, they generally don't last long. They're like a tectonic plate slipping, or a volcano, or something really like kind of big, and it just goes and it's, you know, plays a really important function. But with humanity, we have these rivalrous dynamics of, like, you know, in group, out group, so much tension within identity, and then we have asymmetrical distribution of power, where, you know, this group might have all the money and all the privilege and like all the guns, and this group might not, and so that's where just so much of the sort of expression of the more parts of humanity that I feel shame for emerge. Whereas our our version, it would be like the kahawai getting a longer tail, and then the shark just getting a laser beam attached to its head or something, like, and then, you know, next minute you've got like nuclear weaponry or weaponized viruses or something, you know, like, what's the symmetrical evolution to balance that power out? Whatever that is, it's not good news. So we live in like this asymmetry of power that, I'm starting to become quite fatigued by, and bringing me to draw these analogies of, like, an irresponsible like teenage boy just trying to, you know, burn ants with a magnifying glass or something, you know.
I feel you. And like, wow, laser sharks, that is something to be terrified about. When I met you, you were delivering a talk about co-creating, I think it was called Co-Creating a Sustainable Future, at the Bay of Plenty Garden and Arts Festival. And like, shout out. And, you know, because for me, studying psychology, the way that you come to it from a real cultural perspective, like it's a roots not fruits thing, like, and how we as humans, we gravitate towards doing what the group does. And I think that, yeah, what you've said and what you've covered about that, it's a culture thing, and it's in who we are. And if who we are as children of our environment, then we can, yeah, stepping into realizing that it's not just one person doing a thing or one big company doing a thing badly, but it's a whole, like, multi-level thing. But we're all whole, WHOLE, and that that whole-archy, I haven't heard that word before. To know that there's space for everybody, I think that would really maybe, you're right, change how people interact with themselves and the planet. Yeah. Okay.
I'm
So,
ready.
are you ready for the next question? And if you feel like you've kind of like answered it, you can also go to a whole different direction as well. I'm not going to put words in your mouth. Yeah, let's have some water. So if I was to say to you, does it hurt when you do that? Do that. What's something that hurts that's like, oh, it's good?
Well, I tell you, it's real fresh. It's like it's really alive in me right now. It's pretty edgy. I've debriefed about it with a few close people, but I have yet to broadcast it on the internet. um,
Do you feel comfortable broadcasting it on the internet? If later you say it and then you can come to me, I won't be putting this up for a couple of weeks. So if you've got time and you're like, actually,
yeah.
I don't really want to put
No,
that out there, then
I'm
you don't.
actually,
We don't have to.
I'm actually quite proud.
So,
Like the what I'm about to share is it took a lot of courage and it took a lot of unlearning, a lot of becoming unlearning my numbness that was conditioned into me, you know. And I so on Monday, so yeah, 2 days ago, I spent pretty much the whole morning um, crying. Like I was just so sad. Like I wasn't even sad. It was just a deep sense of sorrow, and I was just on my knees, like just tears coming out my face. Like, oh my god, I was such a mess. I was like, shit was coming out of my nose. I was blowing my nose all the time. It was such a situation. But at no point did it really feel like it was about me, or like I would label it as like bad or not a worthwhile use of my time. Like, and so I just what is it? What's our brief like?
oh, it hurt, but you did it.
Yeah, it really felt, I mean, such deeply uncomfortable feeling, sorrow and grief. And I just, instead of kind of like just blocking it out, I just really rolled with it. And, man, I just feel like I just tapped into like this ancient evolutionary biological technology of just crying to just move a whole bunch of feelings through me, and I feel so much clearer, and I just feel like I belong on this earth a little bit more. And a lot of that came like, I'll speak to kind of what like catalyzed this. I've recently picked up an incredible book, and it's by an Australian guy called Tyson Yunkaporta, and it's called Sand Talk. And it's and I, you know, I'm really big on a lot of the books I read are about sort of indigenous wisdom. I'm studying the world of Māori and the language of Māori, and I've sort of, you know, I'm really curious about Native Indian and Native American indigeneity, and you know, different kind of bits and pieces, my Celtic ancestry, blah, blah. And I was like, I picked up this book, and I was like, oh, this guy, he's got an Australian perspective. And every time I've sort of interacted with Aboriginals in Australia, I've always been like, wow, yeah, these guys are awesome. I remember one thing that really blew me away is that in Australia, apparently you don't approach a fire without a piece of wood,
Really?
right? I mean, do you just write that off as just a meaningless custom, or do you just acknowledge just how fucking logical it is, or not even
I know. All this time, I feel so bad. And I'm like, I'm just thinking back about all the times I've approached a fire without a piece of wood and feeling like, what an idiot I
Yep,
must look like. Like,
totally.
it's like, who would do that? Like, all of us for so
All of
long,
us for so
man.
long. Don't do that. That's silly. The wood needs fire. Come on. And I think also at this point, it's probably worth mentioning that the continent of Australia is just massive, and there's just so many. I don't know. I think there are like multiple thousands of different kind of ethnic identities there. So I might have just been talking to one person. What that's important to acknowledge. But that's also going to be part of my culture from now on. It's like I'm not going to approach a fire without a piece of wood. Sweet. Anyway, so I picked up this book, and usually when we look at a First Nation people or culture, we look at it kind of through like a lens or a portal from the Western worldview or Eurocentric worldview into that Indigenous worldview, and we like, like that's pretty, like, we sort of take the best parts and then we kind of bring them out into our world and we pat ourselves on the back. But like this guy, I don't know. There's something about Australians because they just really don't mince words. Like there's such a rawness. I mean, whoa, about the United States of Australia that I've always appreciated. And this author just really doesn't. He's unflinching in his truth telling, but not through the perspective of looking in at the Aboriginal culture. He's actually writing it from the perspective of the Aboriginal culture, looking back up through that lens or that portal at the Western world, and it's just so. For me, it really just stirred up like so much ickiness, and I suppose like conveniently internalized truths that I knew about the world that had made me, made me like frustrated or feel in my past, where I might have like, in order to just cope with being me and living in the world that I do, I might have like just turned the volume down on it or something. And
Yeah.
reading this book, it was just like he turned the volume up on all of them, and they all just went really big and they just flooded into me, and it really like crushed me. I mean, I'm in lockdown. I'm probably already like a bit sensitive. Whoa. Like it was full on. And so I wound up just really like grieving this this thing that we've created, like intentionally or unintentionally. I mean, it's sort of, it's convenient that it's so self-terminating in its essence. And it's probably going to play out in our lifetime. But like, if it doesn't, at least I'm sort of heartened that it's not going to carry on forever. The workshop that you came to, if it was called Co-Creating a More Sustainable Future, like slap me. What it was co-creating a more beautiful world our heart knows is possible.
No, maybe it was that. I think it was that.
Yeah, because I've got no interest in sustaining this.
But yeah, no, I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember you said that. You
yeah.
said sustainability is
Mm,
not the goal.
mm.
Sorry.
No, no.
Thank you for correcting me. Wow. And like that, when you were like, and it flooded through me, and I was like, ah. I think that reaction, that like physical, visceral reaction, to the extent where it had you on your knees grieving, that's beyond this intellectualizing, rationalizing experience that we've tried to do when it comes to looking at our effect on our Western effect on Indigenous cultures. And to the extent as well where we don't know how to grieve and cry, we could learn a lot
Mm, yeah.
in terms of that. And though, that you moved through it and allowed yourself, like you said, you feel like you can be more on this planet, is how grief can be when we go to the depths of it, that then we emerge with some more love and more understanding.
Mm.
Yeah. So get snotty-nosed on the floor, everyone, crying for whatever you need to do. I have recognized that as someone who is quite sometimes courageous, my way is I can cry in public. Not always. But if it comes up and the opportunity arises, then maybe I will cry in public. But yeah, it's not easy to be seen in that way. And thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And to allow yourself to be moved. Like you said, it's unlearning, right?
Yeah. There would have been hundreds of opportunities in the past for me to have that come in and wash over me, and I would have just no, that's not what I need, or like, or yeah, there's someone here and I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. Or my flatmate was through the wall. They were worried about me. They were like, oh, but it had to be done. Like it really was. That was the moment for that, and I'll never forget it. I'll never ever that. Wow, that time that I just felt so strongly. Growing up as a male in New Zealand, turns out we castrate ourselves emotionally, and if we don't, then others will do it for us. What about you? Has anyone asked you that question?
What am I doing? Does it hurt? That's good.
Yeah.
No, like I think when I made the question, one of the main ones was like what we were actually talking about was showing up to these kind of family conversations. I think for me right now in this moment of the week, I did actually something that I haven't done for a while. Today I admitted that I was stressed. Yeah. Often I find, and something that I've been sitting with is I have this way of the kind of spin that I might put on something. Either it's like very intellectual and very aware, but it might kind of like cap what it actually is that I'm feeling. So maybe I'm spending more time up here in the mind as opposed to in the heart and in the gut. And like to admit that is because, I am someone who I feel like I'm quite embodied and quite in tune, but it's been through therapy brought to my attention that it is something that, yeah. So today I was like voice messaging a friend and I was like, yeah, I'm quite stressed. And I was like, oh no, not stressed. No, I usually say I don't get stressed, but actually I've now said that I am. And so I think, yeah, maybe I am. I mean, I haven't been sleeping very well the last 3 nights. I've been waking up in the middle of the night and clenching my jaw and all that sort of thing. If someone said that they had that to me, I'd be like, yeah, you're stressed. So I'd say the thing that hurts that I'm doing is admitting, being more and more honest with myself, because it's that thing, I guess, of the unlearning. We have our various defense mechanisms and things that we kind of step into, and one of mine is like this the facade or the performer or whatever I put on, and I usually do it so that other people are okay. And yeah, I guess trying to recognize which one is there, and it's very insidious. It's not too far aligned from who I actually am. It's not too far away from who I actually am at my core. But yeah, that's one thing. It's thank you for asking me that. I probably wouldn't have got there otherwise.
Well done. Yeah, I can totally relate to that too. I think I only ever referred to myself as being stressed very recently also. And I mean, it just, if you say it, then you're like, oh, okay. I I remember like the first time I said it, I was so shocked. I was like, oh my God, I'm stressed. Only other people get stressed, not me. And then I was like, whoa, oh my God, what do I do? And then so I wound up drawing an Eisenhower matrix, which is this president of the United States, right? And he just drew like a cross a cross on a page, and there's 4 quartiles, and one of them is not urgent and not important, and then there's not urgent and important, and then there's not important but urgent, and then there's important and urgent. And often when we're stressed, a lot of what we're doing is in this urgent and important quartile, when really our best work gets done in the important but not urgent quartile. And so the idea is to kind of like pull your life down into a state of like unrushed excellence. I suppose if anyone wishes to strive for, I'm trying to think of the word that's like, it's not quite perfect. It's like when you're trying to impeccability. That's really like what I'm trying to go for. Like it's like I just want to be impeccable. Like, screw perfection. Not keen on that. But I just really don't. I just want to be the best version of myself, right? And I can't do that if I'm like backed into a corner and I've got like cortisol like running through my body and I'm like haven't slept right, you know. It's not possible. It's just not. You're not going to roll with that capability. So that was my response. Was rationalize, brain it, the whole thing, and which is of course kind of like almost makes things worse.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
Yeah, I know, humans, far out.
Yeah.
So one thing I loved, you a Wormillionaire.
Mm, yeah.
What's you're the richest man of the worms, the worm world. WORM, worm. Are we talking about the species or the breakdance move?
I've never cracked the worm. I've got friends that can do it really well. But yeah, the Wormillionaire. I'm not sure where you dug that out from, but that's because I have my company Y Waste. We're setting up a nationwide network of worm farms all around New Zealand, and like each worm farm has like maybe I don't know several thousand worms, and it's just got to the point now where I am the steward of over multiple millions of worms. So I thought I'd claim that because I don't have multiple millions of dollars. So might as well just cut your losses and celebrate
Celebrate
your
your
wins.
worms for sure. I love that. I've got this image of on Uncle Scrooge, how he would dive into that thing. I imagine
Yeah,
you just like
he would
launching yourself
dive.
into a thing of worms and just like swimming around with your millions of worms.
Yeah.
Oh,
I've been like knee deep in worms before, but
really?
like yeah, not like needing a snorkel.
No.
It's really funny when I first uttered the word "I'm a millionaire." The image I had was of Oprah Winfrey. You know how every now and again she has like a show and she gets everyone to reach under their seat. I don't know. Let's say they pick out the keys to a car and she'll be like, "And you get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car," and it's just like this. I just imagine myself just like making it rain with worms, just like everywhere. You get
Sensational. What a
yeah,
wonderful,
yeah.
fun, playful image. Oh, so good. Do you want me to tell you a story about? It's not about the worm, the dance move, but I can tell you a story if you like.
Mm. I'd love for you to tell a story.
My family, before I was born, lived in Tonga in the island for 2 years. And that's why my name's Joanna. I'm named after my Tongan godmother, Soana. And but they lived in South Auckland. So when I was young, I used to go and hang out with the Tongan families, heaps. And one time at this Tongan barbecue, so there's like, heaps of them around, a pig on the spit, all that thing. We were having like a dance circle, and they are such a beautiful, joyful culture. All the guys were getting in, everyone's dancing around. It's a real vibe. And I'm like, all right, this is my chance. And so then I go into the middle and I tried to do the caterpillar, which is like the worm but backwards. And I fully smashed my chin
Whoa.
on the concrete. And you know that thing when you're a kid where you like hurt yourself, but you like really don't want to cry because there's other people there. And I just remember like walking inside and like ducking off to a corner and hanging out with the sausage sizzle. Like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Every time I think about breaking out the
Mm,
worm, I think
mm,
about the
mm.
Tonga barbecue. So also, you are a vibe architect. Now, I am a self-proclaimed
Ooh. Mm,
vibologist.
mm.
Yeah, yeah. What I love about this and you is that it's not what you say, but it's how you say and it's who you are that then gets the people on side to whatever it is, and that energy and that infectious energy that you have and the vibe. So what I'm wondering is, how do you go maintaining the vibe or maintaining this when you're met with resistance, or when you don't feel that great in yourself because you're human and kind of open-eyed to the difficulties of what it is to be alive.
I'll speak to the resistance first. I mean, I was told I was told I was a leader my whole life. Like I don't know, school reports and I don't know. Like you just kind of at some point you just kind of go, okay, that's me. I'll do it, and it needs to be done. And like really bad leadership often like I'm really sensitive to that too. So I'm like, all right, like let's do the do. But yeah, every time I like met with resistance, it's just a really valuable feedback loop. Here's data. I'm taking that on. That to me is really valuable. The framework that I kind of received that through is like finding the signal among the noise. So like, if you imagine like a radio and there's like static, you just want that like the song to come through and you can just hear it and it's like, what's that? That's kind of what I'm looking for. That's how I can kind of steer this waka towards like our destination as a people, because like I don't want to be alone on the waka. That's been a lot of my inquiry recently, is learning how to be with myself alone. But even so, like I've got no interest in like being like the guy who takes all the credit for all the things that we do as a people. Like that's not my jam at all. And I would also offer that as like a critique for a lot of people who they make sense of the world in ways that whatever they are, like so much. I'm sort of like quite tuned into like how people are responding to COVID and like the way that they are like the narratives that they uphold in order to understand things. And one thing I often hear by people who are like have an opinion that's like not supported by many people is they're like, I don't care what you think. I'm my own sovereign being. I'm my own like. I think it's important that people have agency, but I think it's also really important that people acknowledge that we're a hive species. We are like these cognitively geared for social acceptance animals that if we can't listen to the people around us, and especially like the ones that we really care about, how long do we expect to like kind of stay warm by the campfire? It's really important to receive different points of view and plug it into our own. And so that's that resistance part about like, I don't know, if I'm up like waving a flag and come this way, that's a metaphor. I might have done that, but anyway, and like people want to come and they're like, oh, no, we don't want to go over there. I'll be like, oh, okay, where do we want to go? And then I forgot the rest of the question.
That's all good. Me too. So swept up in what you were saying. So yeah, choice as. We've got one more question.
Yes.
If you were able to send a message on a text message or or if it was on a billboard, any way you want to broadcast it to everyone, what would it be?
Wow. I get these kind of like, I get the answer to this question arrive at me like every other day and they just fade. I need to start writing them down. But it would be something along the lines of to somehow like gently remind people that life is really big and humanity is really small and that they're a small part of that, but that doesn't make it any less meaningful or insignificant, and that actually more meaningful. There's purpose in participation. Maybe that's it. There's purpose in participation.
That's beautiful. I'm imagining, because you said gently, I'm imagining you just like blowing it out in a kiss to all the world, because you said you kissed the ocean, blew a kiss to the ocean. Yeah. So you could like blow out a universal kiss. There's purpose in participation.
Yeah. Yeah. Another way that I articulated it earlier, which is almost like my mantra, is to humble myself to nature and be more in service to life. I think using humility is a bit more constructive than like, you don't matter. Because that's kind of like where a lot of the really more switched on people in my life have sort of wound up as like, versions of like Tim Minchin. Are you familiar with Tim Minchin? He's like so smart, such evidence-based scientific brain, but he's gone so far through that he's now like basically a narcissist. No, wait a minute. Is he a narcissist or is he a what is it when there's no more purpose in life?
A nihilist. A narcissist is someone who like loves themselves and loves their own reflection. When you made that call, I was like, Oh.
Whoa, that's edgy as. Oh man, I just want to like go back. Control Z.
We can
Forgive me.
control Z. It's all good. It's
No,
all
don't.
good.
No, don't. No. Okay, so Tim mentioned he comes across to me like a nihilist. Like, he's said it so many times. He's just like, there's no purpose to any of this, and like we just have to accept that, life. And he takes it in a beautiful direction. He's like, the most important thing is just don't be a dick to each other, and like, definitely not nihilistic at all. And what I crave is for those folks who like have gotten to that point where they're like, what's the purpose if everything, if like nature is like this, a grow medium that like that we just kind of like measure, and like we just live on it. I would just encourage them to sort of go outside and realize that they live in it, not on it, and that we're a part of nature, and that there's plenty of purpose to that. So that would kind of be my shtick, is that we're not separate to it.
Nah, we're together. And so whenever you can, bring a piece of wood to the fire.
That's right. Damn right.
Yeah.
Bring the wood to the fire.
I feel like that's a beautiful place to wrap up today. Thank you so much for your time. How are you feeling?
Yeah, feeling great. Joanna. Soana.
It's
gorgeous. Love it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening and sharing your time with me this week. For this podcast to continue, I could really use your support. If you enjoyed the episode, please screenshot it and put it on your social media, send the episode to your friend or family, and if you can click subscribe to the episodes, they'll fall into your algorithm like your old friend JJ popping into your ear every week. I appreciate it so much. And as well as listening to this podcast, you can just keep on listening to your own wisdom by asking the questions, big and small, like, does it hurt when you do that? Don't do that.